Hi everyone, it's Elizabeth Stephenson with New Direction Family Law, and we're here today to talk about, this month is Women's History Month, and so we're hitting it on the last day. I'm here with Sarah Hink, who is my law partner with New Direction Family Law, and Carly Baker, who is one of our associate attorneys, star maker, I'm telling you.
Yes.
So we're here today, we're going to talk about sort of the differences that have come along and how women and domestic issues have come for the better or the worse and that sort of thing. So as I'm the oldest, I'll go first.
Just by a few years.
Just a few. And I thought this was interesting. One of my favorite stories was from my husband, who was also a family law attorney, and he talked about when he was first started practicing in the 60s, that child support was in criminal court. Okay? And so, which in itself had to be sort of traumatic if you were a woman in the 60s having to go to criminal court to get child support. But they didn't have child support guidelines or anything like that. And so he said he was there one day and he had mom on the stand and he had her bring her baby. They didn't have DNA testing or anything. So judge is there and he had her hold up the baby and had the judge look at the baby and then asked the judge to look at the defendant and the judge said, "Yep, that's his baby."
Oh my goodness. It was always that easy these days.
I know. So we've sort of come a long way because we do child support in a different way now. It's in civil court. So Sarah, can you talk a little bit about that, the guidelines and how that sort of all works?
Well, if you fall within a certain income range, and that's usually $300,000 combined, you're going to be on the guidelines. And there are ways to deviate from the guidelines, but typically every case is going to fall on the guidelines.
Right.
And you look at your gross income for each party, and you base it on that. You base it on overnights, health insurance costs, and a few other costs, and it's very simplified.
Right.
So it's not going to be a big guessing game. It's not going to be that hard for people to obtain the right number if they go to child support enforcement, if they come to someone like us.
Right. So that's sort of one of the easier parts if everybody is a W-2 employee. The other issue is, and now we do have DNA testing, and you can file a motion, for a paternity testing, and there is a presumption that if you are married and you have a child while you're married, that child is your spouse's child.
Right.
And that's not always the case, so that's why there's DNA testing and paternity testing and that sort of thing. So that has changed, and that's made that streamlined and easier and all
not
of
as
that.
intimidating, because you have people doubting that the baby is someone's child, then that's going to be scary to go to court. Okay, well, he's already saying that, I was with someone else, or saying all these lies, I don't know if they'll believe me.
Right.
So that had to be very scary back in the day to have to go through that.
So I can't imagine that. The other big change is equitable distribution, which is how we divide property in North Carolina. And this just blows my mind. Before 1981, that wasn't that long ago. Women didn't necessarily have title to property. So any property that was not titled in a woman's name could not be divided. It just automatically went to the man. We were one title state. And we did have some leverage in that the wife had to consent to the divorce. So she could sort of hold out on the divorce, and then, get some property.
What if she wanted to leave the divorce, too?
Well, then she's kind of screwed on that point.
Choose between living with him or losing the property.
Right, but then we had no-fault divorce come in, but then we still had the antiquated laws and no ED statute. So the husband could have a no-fault divorce and get divorced and keep all the property. And that was in the 80s.
Yeah.
That just blew my mind.
That is crazy.
I know.
And it's back when, also to get a line of credit, that a woman had to have a co-signer that was either like her father or
I
husband.
know. So how does ED equitable distribution work now, Ms. Baker?
Well, now either party can file for it, a male or female, and equitable doesn't necessarily mean equal.
Correct.
However, in most of the cases that we do, that's sort of what we shoot for. And it doesn't matter how property is titled. It matters, is it marital property, which means was it accrued or earned during the marriage for the most part.
Right, and prior to the date of separation.
Yes. After the date of marriage, but before the date of separation, it's probably marital property.
And there's factors there to kind of equalize it, or think, okay, well, if this person wasn't working during the marriage, they were being a homemaker while the other party did all the retirement accumulation and maybe swing it more than 50-50. So there are factors that will go towards women or men. So
right. And most people, if they have a retirement, a lot of people think I earned that, that's mine. And so it's really sometimes a tough conversation to have with people to say, I understand that 401k is yours, but your spouse is entitled to half of it if it was earned during the marriage.
Yeah, and if your spouse took out theirs and cashed it out during the marriage, then unless that you can prove that it was for something
that was not
separate,
marital purpose,
non-marital,
right.
then that's
Right. So,
You're gonna
you know,
yours.
sometimes I say it doesn't matter how bad they are, what their fault is, unless it's like a spendthrift or you're spending money on your girlfriend, it's still going to be divided in half, and that's a hard pill for people to swallow.
right. And that's a good reason to be involved in the finances in your marriage. So you know that if your spouse is spending poorly,
right?
That you can either document it, do something about it, or go talk to an attorney about we're not agreeing on things.
Right.
This is a problem in our marriage. How might this affect me if I continue to stay and let this happen?
Right. So, Carla, what do you generally ask for? What do the courts require? Sort of document-wise. What should, especially a dependent spouse, be going around and nosing around and looking for?
In an equitable distribution claim, well, you would want to have statements from the date you separated.
Right.
So if you guys agree that we separated on this specific date, you would want to go get bank account statements from that date, credit card statements from that date, any real estate you would own. Is there a mortgage for that date? Card payments,
right.
Anything that y'all owned on that date of separation, you would want to have a statement that shows what the balance was on that date. And then it's also very helpful if you can go get statements from the date of marriage as well. And for some people that might be just a couple-year-old statements, and for some people that means you might be trying to track down a 20-year-old statement,
Right.
which is a little more difficult.
Right.
But having a date of marriage statement to show what everybody brought into the marriage, and having a date of separation statement to show the growth or maybe the debt at that time
Right.
that needs to be split up later is really what we're looking at for equitable distribution.
Right.
Very important,
right,
especially
right.
if you have a pension or something
Yes,
like that that
exactly.
started, the beginning, you just put a few years in at the beginning of the marriage, and then you're retired and stayed together for another 10 years. Well, your spouse isn't entitled to half of the pension that you've been receiving the whole time.
Right,
There's
right,
certain
right.
equations for that, and sometimes we have to get experts, CPAs, to come in and value these sort of assets. So
Right.
Use.
And sometimes it's hard. I mean, we can send out subpoenas to banks and financial institutions and that sort of thing, but we need to have some idea of where they might be. We just can't send a subpoena to every financial, group in the whole country. So if you see a piece of mail come in or something laying around, take a picture of it. Just so we have at least what the institution is, even if we don't have the account number, we can still sort of figure out and trace some things out in that way.
Yeah, and these days both spouses tend to have some 401k because both spouses
That's
are typically working.
Right.
So it goes both ways, and of course there's custody changes.
Right.
Since
Yeah.
Back in the day, we used to have the tender years doctrine.
That's right.
Where it was presumed that the child's better off with the mom up until a certain year.
And I still have people ask me that and think that that's true all the time, especially if it's in this sort of, I don't mean this in a sort of discriminatory way, but generally dads feel like they don't have the same rights as moms do, even if they're as involved as mom is.
Right. That's not the case.
No, it's not. And it's certainly in Wake County it's not. We sort of start with the premise of joint custody, which can be, it doesn't have to be 50-50, it just can be, you can live a little more with one parent and be with the other parent and be equally involved. Sometimes it's, don't focus so much on, I want to the exact minute the half and half, because that's not really what it's about. It's about spending quality time with that child and being involved throughout the marriage and prior to the separation and that sort of thing.
And putting the child's interest first, and not any hurt feelings over the separation.
Right.
Any other things. I mean, I have male clients that have primary custody, and the mom has every other weekend.
Right.
In cases like that. So it's not the 10 years doctrine. It's not presumed better to have the child with the mom. So that's a big change too.
Yeah, that's a really big change, and I still see that. We travel around other counties, sort of surrounding counties, and it's North Carolina. If you go out 30 miles, you're in Harnett County, or you're in a more rural sort of county. So I do sometimes sort of feel like they're not quite at the point where they start with the premise of 50-50. They're still looking at the best interest, but I think there's some cultural differences throughout the state that sort of you need to take into consideration too.
And work schedules.
Yeah,
if
exactly.
There's someone that works out of town, travels a lot, then realistically, how can they do 50-50 if they're not in the
Right. Or if you have like someone who's a policeman or a fireman or a doctor or something, you sort of have to be creative and work around those schedules kind of things. Other things that have changed are the domestic violence laws, and I apologize, I didn't do any research on that to see when they sort of came into play, but I think it hasn't been that long, just like the equitable distribution hasn't. Wake County is fantastic. We have a whole floor dedicated to domestic violence to help you fill out the forms, a dedicated courtroom that can do that. And folks like Interact, you can go to Interact and they can help you fill out the forms, and you're dedicated to that, and Interact and other nonprofits can help you sort of walk through that system and get through that in that way. So now you don't have to be married, you can be intimate partners or have a child together to get a protective order kind of thing.
Right.
And there's also no contact orders that if you're sort of like roommates or friends or something like that, it's not quite the same as a domestic violence protective order, but it is saying this person can have no contact with you, can give you some safety.
I think the recent stat I saw was something about 1 in 3 women are victims of domestic violence and 1 in 4 men. So it's definitely something that as a community we all try to be more aware of and make it easier for victims to come out of those relationships, because it's very difficult, and a lot of people on the outside don't really understand why people stay when they're victims, but this has kind of created an avenue. If you go to Interact, you can actually file for the DVPO from there and don't even have to come to the courthouse on that first occasion. So just providing that resource and having counselors there to help people through the process, and understanding that domestic violence isn't just physical, that it can be financial, and when there's kids involved, obviously the people feel threatened that way. But through the DVPO process, there are instances where you can get ordered custody for a temporary order, and you can even get spousal support if the judge is going to consider that. So it does provide means to kind of get out of those situations and give you a temporary fix.
And
yes, Jen?
We have a question.
Yes.
Related to the DVPO. What happens if someone has a DVPO and their spouse violates it?
Ms. Carly?
If you have a DVPO against someone and they come to where you are, or they violate the order in some way, the first thing that we would suggest doing is calling the police. It is a crime. They can be arrested. They can be removed. I believe it's an A1 misdemeanor in North Carolina, which is a serious deal. So violating a domestic violence protective order is actually a crime that you can be arrested for on the spot. So call the police immediately if that were to happen.
So it becomes a criminal charge, and then it becomes what we call a contempt if you don't follow a civil order. So there are ramifications on all sides to that. So you can be immediately, if the officer feels like you have violated that order, you will immediately be arrested and go to jail.
Right, and if it's something where, perhaps contact other than just physical contact, you can go to the magistrate if it occurs, and you don't call the police right away and bring your evidence there, but have a magistrate consider ordering their arrest.
That would be in the case where they're not to contact you via phone or text message, but they're doing it anyway. You would want to take your evidence, take your phone down to the magistrate and show them what's going on, how the other person is violating the domestic violence protective order.
And sometimes, especially if they're kids, there'll be an addendum to that order where it will set into place some temporary custody provisions, and a lot of times it's no contact except regarding the children, and sometimes the person who that order is against sort of takes liberties with that, and it's sort of a fine line that they get right there but don't cross. So sometimes it's hard to say whether they violated or not. So the tighter that we can write those orders and the judge can put parameters around there is helpful, I think.
Yeah, that's a slippery slope for sure, because you want to try and make it work where you can have custody if it's something that's just between the parents.
Right.
You try to help people navigate that process. So definitely speak to an attorney if you're facing some kind of domestic violence. Go seek help through an agency such as Interact or anything like that.
And also Legal Aid. Legal Aid of North Carolina has offices that cover all 100 counties here, so if you can find your local legal aid, they will help you file a DVPO. So,
and a lot of people, and don't think of it just as women who are the ones that are the victims are filing. We have male clients who are also victims, and it's hard it's sort of a hurdle they need to get over to know that it's okay and you deserve the same protection as anybody else does.
And we do face times where it's used against someone, and it's really easy for people to obtain a domestic violence protective order, and that's good for a lot of reasons. It can also be used against people, so definitely if you are on the other side of a domestic violence protective order, at least for the expert day, and you have an attorney,
talk to an attorney too.
It's serious.
Absolutely.
So definitely, even if you say, okay, well, I know they're making that up, I know I didn't do that, definitely the judge is just going to dismiss this. It's not going to result in any kind of order against me. Don't think that way, because you still need representation, and it can last for a year long. So you want to find yourself in that situation and, talk to an attorney about what kind of repercussions there could be against you.
Exactly. And people ask us all the time, it's like, do you have more women clients? Do you have more men clients? And even though we're sort of here on Women's History Month, we really don't. I mean, I think that, everybody deserves appropriate and effective and zealous, advocating on your behalf. And so, we're either or. We're happy to represent our clients, and we do it whether you're male or female. And we do it based on the facts of your case and put those in the best light.
That's right. And we have a great group of females here.
Do we do?
We have one male attorney.
Chris, are you still here?
He might be here. And then we have the three of us, female attorneys here, and we definitely work in a great environment together, and we're thankful to have such a good team of females and male, and serve our clients the best way we can, whether male or female.
Yeah, we did. So, wrap us up, Sarah. How can people reach us? They're gonna. You had something else?
Well, we were going to comment on the spacesuits.
Oh, I forgot. That's how I was going to open up. I don't know if y'all heard this yesterday or not, but it was going to be the first two women spacewalk yesterday. And Carly, didn't you say somebody from your high school was going to be one of
the astronauts was from my high school, White Oak High School in Jacksonville, North Carolina.
That just blows my mind. But we're in 2019, and the reason the spacewalk could not occur yesterday is because they only had one medium spacesuit.
Yeah.
And so
the wrong size.
The wrong size. And that just, you think about we've come a long way, but we still have so much further to go.
They must have a man in charge of the suits.
It doesn't make any sense. What were you thinking?
They should know that women.
And they promoted it for days and days, and it's like,
Oh, we forgot to check the closet.
I forgot to check the closet and see if we had the right suit.
You're gonna have to go shopping.
It's not like you can call Amazon and have it sent. Well, maybe you could. I don't know.
That's true. But we have a long ways to go, women. But we're doing a good job.
We are.
The laws are catching up. Obviously, across the country, I'm sure there are some that could catch up a little bit more.
Yeah.
But we are happy to be here today discussing the laws, how they changed in North Carolina, at least as it relates to family law. Of course, if you have any questions about this, you can either reach out to us afterwards by commenting on the Facebook page, or you can call to schedule a consultation with any of us here, 919-719-3470. Go to newdirectionfamilylaw.com, and you can find out more about us. And the team that we have here at New Direction Family Law.
Right, and we have great information on that website too. So even if you don't feel like you're ready to pick up the phone and make a consultation, at least read. All of our videos are on there, our blogs are on there. What to do before you leave is on there. So it's really good advice. So we hope that you'll visit us, and we're happy that you came and visited with us today. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you. Oh, and cheers.